Good afternoon. I'm here today to present the Foa Activity. The theme we'll be covering is the topic of reader response versus new criticism, which will be focusing on the reading of two poems by two different authors, Ode to My Socks by Pablo Neruda and Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. The point of this activity is for my sister, Laura Duarte, to read the poems with reader's response, which means reading the poems without any background or context knowledge of the poem, the purpose of it, or the author. Once she reads those two poems, she will give her views from what she read, what she thinks about the poems, what she thinks they mean, and after that, I will give her the context, I will give her the reasons for the writing of these poems and the background of the authors to see if her perception of the poem changes with this additional information. So we'll begin by
Ode
by
to My Socks.
Ode to My Socks.
Maro Mori brought me a pair of socks, which she knitted herself with her shepherd's hands. Two socks as soft as rabbits. I slipped my feet into them as though into two cases knitted with threads of twilight and goatskin. Violet socks my feet were two fish made, two long sharks sea blue shot through by one golden thread. Two immense blackbirds, two cannons, my feet were honored in this way by these heavenly socks. They were so handsome for the first time my feet seemed to be unacceptable, like two discreet firemen, unworthy of the womb fire of these glowing socks. Nevertheless, I resisted the sharp temptation to save them somewhere as schoolboys keep fireflies. I learned men collect sacred texts. I resisted the mad impulse to put them into a golden cage, and each day give them a birdseed, a piece of pink melon, like explorers in the jungle who hand over the very rare green deer to the spit and eat. With the remorse I stretched out my foot and pulled on socks. And then my shoes. The moral of my ode is this: beauty is twice beauty, and what is good doubly good, and it is a matter of two socks made of wool in winter.
Okay, thank you for reading. First, what are your first impressions after reading this poem? What do you think of it?
That it talks about um, especially socks, and he's talking about them, but he's comparing them, like how good they are, with different objects and different people or like actions.
What do you think was the main purpose for the writing of this poem?
Not sure. Maybe he had really nice socks.
All right. Was there any particular part of the poem you found more interesting?
Yes, when he compared it to when he said that the fish part and there were two long sharks sea blue shot through.
All right. Anything else you might want to add or understand about the poem, or any other meaning behind the socks or anything like that?
No.
No? All right. This is reader's response. She is 12 years old, currently in 6th grade, and she read this poem for the first time. So for her, this is the first thing she can see about the poem. Now I'm going to read some facts about the author. First of all, Pablo Neruda was born in 1904 and died in 1973. He was of Chilean descent. He was of a Chilean descent. His father was a railway employee, and his mother died shortly after his birth, who was a teacher. He then moved from his hometown and began moving around towns due to the death of his mother. Now, Ode to My Socks, which was originally Spanish, was Oda a los Calcetines. And the poem comes from a book called The New Elemental Odes, o in Spanish, Nuevas Odas Elementales, which is a collection of odes to really ordinary things like human skull, the dictionary, seagull, a lizard, and the main idea of this poem is to take poetry out of the fancy shamsi, romantic that it is known of. Usually, poetry is known as language that's fancy, but this poem is to connect with the common people, the regular people. This kind of poetry is to speak to the common folks, which was almost a political statement for Neruda. Did you know that Neruda was he ran for the Chilean president of the Communist Party?
Nope.
So with this poems, what he was trying to do was appealing to the sense of the people. There is no fancy talk in the poem, as you can see. It is basically talking how beautiful a pair of socks are.
They're ugly.
But to him, they're the most beautiful thing. He felt that by doing this type of poetry, he was doing a social duty. Now, he goes along saying that Ode to My Socks is something that everybody can relate to, and that's the main idea of it. He wants to keep it real, he wants to do it proper, and he's doing it by a simple object which is praising it in the poem. For him, the idea of this poem is to reach out to the common people, people who may not have enough education. Poetry is for everyone, not just high classes. And this is one of the main reasons he wanted this poem, because he wanted to show that beauty is everywhere, not just in fancy things. Now, hearing this, what are your thoughts now about the poem?
Like you said, he was maybe what he wanted to do with the poem, taking an ordinary everyday object that we see as something necessary and something not so fancy that we use like occasionally for a special occasion, or like you said, that poems were sometimes written because of like fancy things or sometimes love in those occasions, but he tried to make it his own way by using regular objects and making them beautiful in the sense how they use it, and using things that sound beautiful to describe an ordinary object.
So that's changed a bit of your perception of the poem?
Yeah.
Before you used to think it was only about some socks, but now it has another meaning of showing that beauty can be in common things. Thank you. Now, this is known as new criticism. She has heard the context behind the reading of this poem and has changed her perception of the poem. Before it was just about some simple socks, now she knows that it was almost a political statement for the common people, to show that poetry can be for everyone. Now, moving on to the next poem, Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. You can go ahead and read it.
Still I rise. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may treat me in very dirt, but still like dust I'll rise. Does my assassins upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides, just like hoops springing high, still I rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shattered shoulders falling down like teardrops weakened by full cries? Does my heightiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like air I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the hut of history's shame and I rise. Up from the past that rotted in a pain, I rise. I am a black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling. I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise.
Thank you for reading. Now, again, what do you think of the poem?
Before I say something about the poem, I noticed that different authors give it more rhythm as well. Because in the first one, it had more rhythm.
Right, that's a type of poetic device. What else did you think about the poem?
Maybe thinking about how the last poem had something to do lifelike. Maybe she's talking about something that happened in her past, because it would usually say I rise, so it's like coming down from something awful. And in one of the verses, she said she's coming back from pain and like hard things. So maybe she's talking about maybe something that happened to her in the past, and she put it in a poem to express herself.
All right. Anything type of purpose that it might be directed to? Or do you think it might be directed to a certain type of people, or you can't, or you don't know?
Maybe she was doing it to intend, like I said, my definition, or well, my example, that she maybe did it because she had a pain in the past, but
Okay.
maybe someone else can take it as a gift or something that they can use in their regular life.
All right. Well, again, this is reader response. She talked about and analyzed what she understood just by the reading of the poem. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and give you some of the context. First of all, when you hear the name Maya Angelou, which was the author of this poem, Still Arise, do you think it's a man or a woman?
A woman.
Correct. Were you aware that she was an African American?
No, but now I know like why she says I rise.
That's one of the things. She's not only an author, she's an actress, screenwriter, dancer, and poet. She was from a divorced family from very young, and the thing that marked her is that as an African American, she experienced racial prejudice. Do you know? You understand what racial prejudice is?
Yes.
Racism towards her, and discrimination when she moved to Arkansas, which was a very racist state. So she was African American. She was present during the years of segregation, during the years of a lot of racism in the United States. Around the 50s, the 60s, she was present at that time, and she was there when the black people were oppressed. Now, I want to tell you that during the poem, she's referring a lot how, for example, when she say, "You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lie," she's referring her to a writing can poison the minds of the oppressors. The whole poem, as such, is that she's accepting the vulnerability she has in face of the white domination, and saying, with all of the black people, saying that we will overcome this white power domination, this white people oppression. We will overcome it. We will rise from it. When you read the poem, you might think she's talking about herself, but she's talking about the black people as a whole. She's saying, "I rise," which is an confirming and affirming that no one will succeed in keeping her down and keeping her oppressed. Because she was a strong civil rights activist. Do you understand what a civil right?
Yes.
She fought for black people's rights, and throughout her life she has done it. So now, knowing this, does this change how you view the poem?
Well, a little bit, but like I kind of got part of the idea that she had something in her past, and well, still in the present and even in
It
the
is
future.
presented there, yes.
I still got that part, but she wasn't only talking about herself; she was talking about others, and I think I kind of got the part right when she said, when you told me if it was only for her or for others. Maybe even though discrimination for African Americans has already like moved on, there are still people that for certain
Yes.
occasions or moments are going through that. Maybe as well as I said, the poem could like give them some ideas or like make them not feel down because at least they're getting hurt or suffering, but at least people that stood because of how they looked to be treated how they're treated daily today, not different but equal.
Okay, this is an example of new criticism. She changed her view, although she had a certain idea, but the moment you knew that she was an African American, you understood the
Why
poem right
she
away.
said, I rise.
Because you understand the historical context of what
Yeah.
happened in the U.S. or the segregation. So thank you. This concludes the FOA activity, which is explaining reader response versus new criticism. I want to thank Laura for participating and being part of the reading of these poems. Thank you very much.